We're almost 3 months into 2016, and Derrell, how does 2016 compare to 15?
Well, a number of things are going to change in 2016. Beef production will begin to grow after declining for many years. The cattle slaughter will be part of that. Carcass weights are heavier, of course. That was an issue last year. It has been the last couple of years, but when we combine that with some growth in slaughter, we'll see beef production start to grow for the first time in a long time. Cattle numbers have been growing for a couple of years. We got new inventory numbers a couple of weeks ago, and those confirmed that we did start herd expansion. We actually started minimally in 2014, much more aggressively in 2015. That begins to show up as increased production in 2016, but really it's a process through this year and into next year and the year beyond when it really takes effect.
Let's talk more about the end beef numbers.
On the meat side, of course, beef production is going to grow, so per capita supplies will be bigger. Retail prices have already peaked. They're starting to work their way down, but from very, very unprecedented levels. When you look at the other meats, we've had ample supplies of pork and poultry this last year. 2015 was plagued by a lack of disease problems on the pork side, so we had lots of pork in the market because we planned for more losses. On the poultry side, of course, we had the avian influenza problems, which restricted exports and put more of that meat back into the domestic market. In 2016, we'll see a little increase in pork production, but probably rebounding exports, so actually less per capita consumption. On the poultry side, assuming we don't have any more avian influenza, that's a big wild card as we go forward, we'll probably see modest but minimal increases in poultry consumption this year as well. On the beef side, again, we've got increased production, but we're going to offset that to some extent with decreased imports. So beef consumption will be up, but not as much as the production will increase.
Now, you talked a little bit about trade in there. Let's kind of elaborate on the exports of the meats.
For beef, we've had 2 years of very strong imports. We had record high prices. We had a limited supply. We had a strong dollar, all of which tends to favor imports of beef and discourage exports at the same time. Both of those things are beginning to moderate a little bit. Obviously, we're coming off of record high prices, so we've got a little bit of price that's favorable to exports and will disincentive the imports of beef. The dollar's still strong and probably will stay strong, so that's an issue that continues to be there. But the trade picture is kind of turning around as you would expect as we come off of record high prices, and will moderate some of what's going on with our domestic production.
2015 brought the rains. 2016, we're really benefiting from good wheat pasture. What do you see across the state?
On the wheat pasture side, we're at the time of year where we're approaching first hollow stem. The wheat production guys tell us that in the southern part of the state we're probably at first hollow stem, so cattle that are going to come off if we're going to try to harvest the grain, got to come off. We'll be in the northern half of the state with that threshold here in the next few days probably. So we'll see some movement of cattle. We sometimes see a little bit of a wheat pasture run. On the other hand, wheat prices are pretty low. Some of these guys are thinking about grazing out the wheat, and so some of them actually need more numbers because you typically have to increase stocking numbers. So we've seen feeder cattle markets a little bit stronger seasonally the last couple weeks as a result of that.
If producers keep the wheat or keep the cattle on the wheat, do you see more influx of cattle?
There could be. I think there will be some additional demand for that. And at this point, with the good moisture conditions we've already got some folks starting to think about green grass for summertime. And so we'll see some additional stocker demand here over the next month or two.
What do corn prices look like for feed?
Feed prices will stay where they have been, which is relatively attractive. They're higher by long-term historical standards, but significantly less than the last few years. That favors the feedlot side. Sometimes it favors them to the point of getting into trouble if they feed cattle too long, but in general it's a favorable thing, and we do see feedlot margins beginning to improve a bit over time.
A conversation I wouldn't have thought we'd had back in 2014. Derrell Peel, Livestock Marketing Specialist here at Oklahoma State University.